Morning or good evening, depending on what part of the world you're dialing in from. And thank you very much for joining me. My name is Huzefa Hamid, and today we're going to do a weekly market analysis. Before we get on with the actual content, a quick, very standard risk disclaimer, just letting you know that really today's webinar is for educational purposes only. We're not giving trading tips and so on. And the usual, the risk of trading carries, or trading carries the risk of loss. Okay, so again, my name is Huzefa Hamid. I am one of the senior analysts with Daily Forex. I'm predominantly a Forex trader. And I do trade some futures contracts. I trade 7 or 8 of the major pairs. So when I say major pairs, I mean pairs against the US dollar. A couple of crosses here or there, like euro yen, pound yen, Aussie dollar CAD, but really it's 7 or 8 major pairs, and a couple of futures contracts as well. So I trade the S&P futures contracts, crude oil, natural gas. Now, I think really the most important thing I can tell you about me, so you have an understanding of my perspective when I'm giving a market analysis, is that I predominantly use technical analysis for my decision making. So what that means in practice is that I'm looking at a price chart. I personally use very few indicators, if any. You'll see a raw price chart. I mark my own support and resistance lines, and occasionally some Fibonacci levels. I don't use moving averages, for example. I don't use things like RSI or stochastics. They can be really useful if you have a strategy that's based around that, and that's absolutely fine. For my own trading, it's very price action oriented. I do look at an economic calendar. So I look at, for example, what announcements are coming up, but I'm looking at that economic calendar to figure out, what's driving price, what big announcements that will push the price into a new trend, or possibly if there's a reversal happening, that extra liquidity or order flow that economic announcement can give. I'm interested in the timing of that, but I'm not looking at, say, analyzing a CPI number or production numbers and so on, employment claims, and trying to figure out the direction of an economy. It's really, okay, this is an announcement. This is how it might affect my chart. I'm based in Toronto, Canada. I'm always curious to know where people they log into these webinars, log into the market analysis, where you guys are based. So if you have a second, just in the participant in the Q&A or the chat window on Zoom. Hopefully everyone's familiar with Zoom and product like Zoom. We're well into the pandemic, so everyone is attending webinars rather than doing in-person meetings. But in that chat window, if you just type in your city or your country or the state you're from, if you're in the US, or province if you're in Canada, let me know where you're from. I'll give you 30, 60 seconds. Nijo from Zimbabwe, nice to meet you, Nijo. Still from Atlanta. Nathan from Melbourne, Australia. Australia's on my wish list to visit. I've got a couple of cousins there. Actually, they're in Sydney, not in Melbourne, but I definitely want to visit. Naisha from UK, London. Great to meet you, Naisha. You probably can tell from my accent that I'm from England. I'm from South London, a place called Croydon. Naisha, let me know where you're from in London. I'm just curious. I'm from Selsdon in Croydon, if you know that area. Sirak in Sweden. You're the first Swedish person I've had in one of these webinars. It's great to meet you. Destiny from Lagos. Nice to meet you, Destiny. Thank you. That's great. It's a pretty international crowd. So I think it's for everyone. It's going to be afternoon or evening, it seems. Nice to meet everyone. Okay, so let's get on with looking at the market outlook. First thing we're going to do is look at the economic calendar. I'm going to see what's coming up in the next week or so, and then we're going to look at some charts. Okay, so I'm going to start from tomorrow. There's not much else going on today. So I'm going to look at the rest of this week and next week. So tomorrow, you see the times in GMT and 8:30. So I'm going to quote, I'm in Toronto, I'm in Eastern time. So verbally, I'm going to quote the Eastern time. So tomorrow morning for me, CPI data is coming out from the US. And later on that afternoon, crude oil inventories. in the and again around lunch. Sorry, that's in the morning in crude oil inventories. Lunchtime-ish for me. Bank of England governor speaks, so the GBP will be affected by that, and then USDCHF it speaks at 2 p.m. Eastern time. It's a busy day when it comes to the US tomorrow, and then later on in the afternoon, stroke evening, or Thursday morning, is the EU economic forecasts. Going back into Thursday, USD unemployment claims. Friday, pound, some more pound news, GDP quarter on quarter, and then over to next week now on Monday, the Aussie dollar monetary policy meeting minutes. So it's kind of depending on where in the world you are. For me, that's the evening. It's really the next morning, GMT Tuesday morning, if you're actually in Australia. Wednesday, CPI numbers for the pound. There's a lot of pound stuff happening, and we're going to look at the pound in particular in today's analysis. And then retail sales and purchasing index. It's a big week towards the end of next week. So I think the majors are really going to move, especially with the FOMC minutes on Wednesday. The Aussie dollar employment numbers, pound retail sales, USD manufacturing employment. That's a big announcement at the end of next week. And then crude oil inventory. So there's a lot going on the following, so not really the end of this week, but the end of next week. And continuing on Friday, CAD retail sales. There's not much happening in the USD CAD, I have to admit. USD flash manufacturing PMI. So those are the big announcements going into next week. Now, if you're looking for an economic calendar, so if you're planning your own trades, one of the sources is XNest. XNest is a broker, so you can go to xnest.com/calendar. This is what their economic calendar looks like. One of the nice features on their calendar is that here you've got a drop down window where you can specify the currencies. You can filter out the currencies. So for example, in this pop-up, I've just filtered out the GBP. So if I'm interested in trading the pound dollar, I can just tick off the GBP and nothing else. And then I just get all of just the GBP announcements. So I can figure out what's going to be moving or when I should expect to see liquidity and flow in the GBP if I'm planning my trades. You can see the little flame symbol there. And those are really the more high impact announcements on the GBP on next week, 12th of, or the end of this week, 12th of February. Okay, so let's look at some charts. So in a second, you're going to see my MetaTrader come up. Or actually, you're going to see my trading view come up. I'm going to start off with a dollar index and talk a little bit about how that's looking. So there you go. So this is the dollar index. This is really where I start planning my trades. I want to get an idea of how the US dollar overall is moving and plan my trades in sync with that. Now, some brokers will allow you to trade the dollar index. I personally don't trade the dollar index as a single currency or as a single kind of CFD or asset class. You can certainly do that if you want. And it does behave very technically. Actually, maybe I'm missing out. Maybe I should be trading. This is a long-term chart, but this is really where I'm getting the best view. So I'm going to start off with the daily. And so one of the things I want to point out on the daily chart is that this is going back now to March. So you can see the dollar index rose very rapidly in March. And obviously, I'm sure everyone remembers, this is March 2020. This is when the financial impact of COVID or coronavirus really became apparent. So we saw a big move in the dollar. This is when the S&P 500 also took a big move down. It was around the same time. So you're seeing a lot of liquidity in the markets around this time. And it made this support level. It eventually retraced down, made a triangle formation here. Let me draw that for you. This is going back last year, so we're not going to pay too much attention to this, but it just gives you an idea of the technical picture. So there's a triangle formation. It kind of made a consolidation, and it broke that. But what was interesting for me is that it broke the support. And when it broke the support, it came back and tested it as a resistance. So I see this happening a lot in charts. And this is it's called a role reversal. When a support is then broken and turns into resistance. It can happen the other way, of course. When a chart makes a resistance, the resistance breaks and it gets tested as a support from the other side. It's a really nice way of getting into trade. It's a fantastic trade entry mechanism. So it broke the support. Eventually, break this support, made a new support below, and tested that all support as a resistance. If you're trading this area, if you're trading this, watching it bounce, you can be bearish in the US dollar index, and you can even trade the dollar index if you want. It broke that support, and recently it's tested that area now as a resistance. So I'm bearish the US dollar index. So I'm probably, most of my trades will be bearish US dollar moving forward. It's been moving down, and it's in a nice downtrend. You've got, my definition of a downtrend is that you have lower highs. So you can see that, you've got going right the way back. You've got lower highs here in this triangle formation. And then this is classic. This is very, very textbook downtrend for me. And then you've got more lower highs here. And now you have the last lower high there. So you've got a series of lower highs. Nice downtrend. Support's being broken, just turned into resistance. I'm thinking the dollar index is going to go down. So that's really my starting point as a trader. So let's start looking at the first big pair, which is the euro dollar, EU or euro USD. This is the daily chart again. We're going to zoom into the 4-hour. So I start my analysis around the daily. I sometimes look at the weekly, but really it's around the daily, and then I go down in terms of my execution. It's going to be on the 15-minute, maybe the 5-minute, and the hourly. And you can break out the daily if you want into the 4-hour, just to gives you a bit more detail and gives you a bit more context. But getting the bigger picture gives you an idea about overall trend, overall direction, and then you can move down to find your trades from there. So this is a daily chart. You've got about a year's worth of data here, going back to 3rd of April, beginning of April 2020. So it made this resistance area here, and that level, I can tell you, is about 1.1957. So 1957 on the Euro USD. It made a resistance level here. Resistance levels, they tend to be more support and resistance. They tend to be more zones than actual hard levels. So it's popping up. So, and then it tested it again. It broke out here, really decisive breakout here. So you had a big long daily candle, decisive breakout, but that momentum wasn't kept, and it's coming back down. And now it's tested that resistance as a support. So Euro USD, I'm bullish. Now, that means I'm bearish the USD essentially. I'm bullish because I think it's come back down. It's tested this as a support. This is a really interesting support, this candlestick setup here. So we'll talk a little bit about this candlestick setup. You've got a bearish candle, long bearish candle with short wicks, immediately followed by a bullish candle whose body pretty much equals the previous candle, again with short wicks. When you have short wicks, you have a decisive movement. So you have a decisive down movement followed by a complete change in sentiment with a decisive up movement, and it happens in that area. So I mark the support line at the bottom of this red candle, and if you look to see where it happens around where that resistance was. So this is obviously a key level, and I'm bullish now. I think the trend will continue. The trend will continue up, so I'm bullish Euro USD. And you can now, this is now the 4-hour chart, same level here. This is support. So this is where you got this down move here on the daily, and then you have an up move here again, the next daily candle, and you can see there's a bit of a retrace, and then you've got another impulsive move. here. So you've got a leg up, small pullback, another leg up. I think it's making a very small pullback, and I think the euro is gonna take off. So I'm bullish euro USD. If you have any questions, by the way, feel free to put them in the Q&A window. I'd be happy to elaborate on anything that I'm showing you. Okay, so that was a euro USD. So now let's look at let's go to dollar yen. Okay, so dollar yen is interesting. It was in a downtrend. I marked it with this dashed yellow line. It's a volatile downtrend, meaning that it was really big pullbacks. It wasn't narrow. It was wide in terms of how it moved down. So it wasn't narrow and neat. The narrower a trend, the easier it is to get into. The less volatile it is, the cleaner it is. This is not a clean downtrend. It's very unclean. So yes, it was moving down, but the many instances, I think if you would have got into it, you would have been stopped out, even though you would have been right on direction. Okay, so you have this downtrend for the dollar yen. It broke the trend line. So really the trend line you can see kind of from here. There are a bunch of touches, maybe a little bit here and a couple there, not quite that neat, but there are a bunch of touches, downtrend line. It broke the trend line with a decisive breakout, big impulsive move, but it really stalled hard at the last kind of key resistance, which was here. And, it got up there and it really doesn't want to be there. It's moved swiftly down. So I'm still bearish, even though it broke the downtrend line. Remember, if a trend line is broken, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to just move in the opposite direction or reverse. It just means that a segment of the trend is broken. But I think now it met its first test and the bear stepped in. So I'm bearish dollar yen. And this is the 4-hour chart. So it's the same chart. So this is the dollar yen on the daily. Zooming into the 4-hour. Here you can see it's really moved down hard. So there's that resistance point. It got up there, legged up there, and immediately pushed down hard. I wouldn't just jump in and go short at the moment. What I would want to do is see a bit of a counter or pullback, nice and narrow, and then for it to move back down. So, if this is the spot where you're seeing the pullback, we'll see, somewhere around there, if it kind of pulls back into this region and it doesn't like swipe up, but it's a slow moving pullback. That's a good area to get into. Or one of the other things you could do is let me draw the 50% level there. Let it retrace into the 50% level there, or as far up as there. I don't think it will get as far up as there. I think it will just slow down into this kind of region and then go down. Nathan, you're asking me, do I factor in volume at all into my decision making? That's a really interesting question for me right now, because I'm studying volume profile at the moment as a technical analyst, and I've been trading on and off for, I'd say 7 years full time over the last 20. I haven't really looked at a good critical look at volume, and that's going to change. Volume is very easy to come by on futures contracts, not so easy on Forex or spot Forex, because of every broker quotes volume, but you just don't know the accuracy of it because you're really relying on the broker's liquidity. Whereas volume in futures, you're relying on the exchange's liquidity. But it's something I'm studying. There's a couple of excellent volume profile traders I know. Actually, somebody who lives quite close to me, just outside of Toronto. And his results are stunning. So that's something I'm really looking into. But beyond that, Nathan, I'm not, at the moment, for the way I'm displaying the charts, I'm not factoring volume. Thanks for asking that question, Nathan. Okay, dollar Swiss. This is interesting to me because I did this analysis about a month ago, and I literally put up the same chart for dollar Swiss because it's still applicable. There's a support that was broken, and it kind of confirms this downtrend we've been having. This is a daily chart again. Downtrend we've been having in dollar Swiss. Support gets broken. There's a new resistance that's formed. that got broken, and now it's kind of sitting at that old resistance. It's just really just jumped down and sitting on that old resistance. So the question for me is, is this a true reversal? There's a small head and shoulders pattern. There's a, I can draw it out. It's pretty simple to draw out. There's your head, and there's a little shoulder, and a little shoulder. There you go, smaller head and shoulders pattern. Okay, my hunch is that dollar Swiss will continue to be bearish. I don't think it will bounce off this resistance. It's not much of a resistance. I think this head and shoulder pattern, I think it's played out. I think it's had its moment. It's moved back up. And I think that overall, the bigger trend, my bias is always towards the bigger trend. I think the bigger trend will hold out. So I'm going to go to the hourly. So there you can see the breakout from this. So let me go switch between charts. This is the daily. This is the resistance here. This is that same resistance here. You can see the touches there. Touch, 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 touch. So I could actually just draw a big zone here. You can see that the kind of resistance, and it decisively breaks out here. Really decisively moves up, but it's really now legging down. It's not, these are big impulsive moves down. They're not, long red candles, and they're quick. I'm always interested to see the speed of the move. Insert another. So this is two impulsive moves and a counter move in between. I think this will. I don't think this support resistance will hold now as a support. But if it bounces off, I'll be prepared to go long. But I'm more dollar. I'm going to be monitoring this pair to see what happens at this level, and we'll see. Dollar CAD. Dollar CAD. I want to give you the analysis because it is a major in my mind, but I'm not seeing amazing trading opportunities here. Nice. I trade in W. I'm answering a question from the panel from one of the members. I trade in WTI crude oil and follow US dollar. Most of the time the dollar goes up and oil doesn't come down, it gets stuck. How would I find direction? Are you asking for direction in crude oil based on the US dollar? I'm assuming you are. Okay. Okay, so thanks for that. Naisha, if you're looking for direction in crude oil, I sadly don't have the crude oil charts because we're predominantly Forex with daily Forex. I look at crude oil independently of the US dollar, and I literally just use support and resistance to find my direction in crude oil. And sometimes I see it, and sometimes it's messier. So there isn't a hard and fast, okay, this is how I get my direction, but it does depend. I look at the crude oil independently using support and resistance, using principally the type of analysis that you're seeing on the screen. I hope that helped. Nice. I'll come back to that. We've got 4 minutes left. I want to see if we can finish off at 2:30. So I'll come back to that if we have a bit of time. Dollar yen, long-term support that launches a huge rally. That support gets broken. It touches again, but it really just gets broken. Now tested as a resistance very cleanly. And now we're just seeing long. I think this downtrend is going to continue. So we're seeing the lower, again, my standard definition, lower highs. I'm not going to mark out every high, but you kind of get the picture. And then you have another, whoops, there, I have already marked it out. So right there. So I think the downtrend is going to continue with, you go to the 4 hour, it's a bit of a messy chart, really. There's a trend that's continuing. So if the price kind of gets up to this area here again, this is a good short area. I think it stops above here. I think the ship has sailed for this. I can't see an entry, but I'm bearish dollar CAD. Okay, so the trade really, I think that the most, I'm going to save the best for last, is the pound dollar. I think it's an excellent position to trade right now. We've had a uptrend, but it's been a volatile uptrend. It's been trending up since, well, actually, you can go back a while now. You can go back all the way to beginning of COVID, since March. The dollar, but it's been volatile. It's had some big dips, and especially in the last little bit, it's been super volatile. You could get into these trends, but you would have, you would have probably gotten stopped out, unless you had a very wide stop. But what it did do recently is, and I've been looking at this actually since last night and this morning, is it made this resistance area here. And I just watched it. Whoops, insert shape. There you go. I just watched it break the resistance, really break out. And you can see this on the hourly. That's the resistance area. It's broken out. It's tested as a support on the 4 hour, on the hourly, and now it's moving up. Bullish, bullish pound dollar, Aussie dollar. In a nice, I'm going to zoom out for a second. Very neat uptrend, non-volatile. There's a kind of a support and resistance play made around this area, made a bit of a resistance, tested as a bit of a support. And again, you can zoom in to the hourly or the 4 hour, and you can find a trade. I think this has been your counter move here, and I think it's going to rocket up. New Zealand dollar, very similar scenario. Up, it looks almost identical to the US dollar, sorry, Aussie dollar. Nice flat uptrend. It's made this really nice, neat flat area at the end. Bullish. Support and resistance play again. Here's a resistance. I found this area that's kind of peaked out. I marked a resistance line. It tested as support some days ago, end of last month, and I think it's moving up. This is where I got a first entry on this second touch here. I missed this, but the second touch, when I saw it bounce off neatly, I got my second entry. I got my first entry rather on the second touch of New Zealand dollar, US dollar. So that's a cap. So I'm bearish essentially. Dollar in total, bullish Euro USD, bullish Aussie dollar, GBP US dollar, New Zealand dollar. Really bearish those pairs. USD CAD. So bullish those, bullish Aussie dollar, pound dollar, New Zealand dollar, Euro USD. Really bullish those pairs. Bearish USD CAD. Couple of final comments. We're getting to the end of the session is 2:30 on the dot. My analysis as a trader, weekly, daily, 4 hour. My execution, as you've seen, is hour, 15 minute, 5 minutes. That's really where I zoom in for the execution. Some last comments. If the chart isn't clear, stay away. So to Nisha's comment about crude oil, there may be times where the chart isn't clear. That's absolutely fine. Mind your risk always. We don't have time to talk about risk. And if you have any, but always have a stop loss. Don't trade too much on a single, put too much of your account in a single trade. And if you want to get hold of me, if you just want to talk to me about what I've talked about now, or just I'm always enjoying that process of meeting new traders. Huzefa at dailyforex.com. We'd be happy to hear from you. It's 2:31 p.m. Eastern time. I've just gone 1 minute over. Hopefully people have been able to stick around. Thank you very much for joining me today. I very much appreciate it. And there's a poll that's coming up. Let us know what you think. And the broker that I used before was XNES. If you want the economic calendar. So just go to xnes.com. Okay, so you'll see the poll come up, and have a fantastic week. Take care, everyone. Bye now.